The first bell of the morning hadn't even finished echoing through the halls when the whispers began. They slithered from locker to locker, from classroom to classroom, carrying the same sharp curiosity that always followed someone new. The students had already decided what they wanted this day to be, a test, not of knowledge, but of strength. The new teacher stood alone at the front of the room, hands steady, eyes calm, unaware that within the next 60 seconds, the same students who smirked at him would be fighting back tears and begging for forgiveness. He wasn't what they expected. He didn't walk in with arrogance or fear. He didn't shout to establish dominance, nor did he smile nervously trying to win approval. He simply introduced himself, voice warm, posture relaxed, as if he belonged there. That alone unsettled them. This school had a reputation, one whispered about in staff rooms and warned against in emails. Teachers came and went. Some lasted weeks, some days. Students here were sharp, wounded, and angry at the world, and they took that anger out on anyone who seemed weak enough to absorb it. The challenges started immediately. Chairs scraped loudly across the floor. Phones buzzed openly on desks. A paper airplane cut through the air and landed near his feet. Laughter followed, loud and intentional. They wanted to see him snap, to see the familiar pattern of frustration, shouting, punishment. That was the game. That was how they broke teachers and proved their power. But the new teacher didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten detention. He picked up the paper airplane, unfolded it slowly, and smoothed it flat on the desk beside him. He looked around the room, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous to bullies, understanding. He began to speak calmly, clearly, not about rules, but about pain. About how easy it is to hurt someone when you've been hurt yourself. About how strength isn't found in humiliation, but in restraint. The room grew quieter, not because they were afraid, but because they were confused. This wasn't part of the script. One student tried again, louder this time, mocking his voice, testing his limits. The teacher paused, turned, and met the student's eyes. In that brief moment, something shifted. Instead of calling him out, the teacher spoke about a boy who once sat in a classroom, just like this one, angry, disruptive, always looking for a fight. A boy who learned too late that his behavior wasn't power, it was a shield hiding fear. The story hit closer than anyone expected. Faces that had been smirking stiffened. A girl near the window stared down at her desk, jaw tight. A boy in the back crossed his arms, suddenly uncomfortable. The teacher continued, explaining how that boy lost chances, trust, and people who cared, not because he was bad, but because no one ever stopped to see why he was hurting. He spoke about regret, about wishing someone had looked past the behavior and seen the person underneath. Then came the 60 seconds that changed everything. He told them why he chose this school. Not because it was easy, but because he knew what it felt like to be written off. He admitted he had once been the problem student, the one teachers warned each other about. He stood there, vulnerable, unarmored, offering them the truth instead of authority. And in that honesty, the room cracked open. The laughter was gone. The phones were face down. One by one, students felt something unfamiliar rise in their chests, shame mixed with respect. The bully who had mocked him earlier shifted in his seat, eyes glistening despite his effort to look tough. Another student whispered an apology, barely audible. The atmosphere changed so fast it felt unreal, as if the air itself had softened. The teacher didn't demand apologies. He didn't savor the moment. He simply nodded and thanked them for listening. That was what broke them completely. Because forgiveness offered before it was asked for forced them to face themselves. Within moments, the same students who had tried to humiliate him were asking quietly if they could start over, if they could do better. The challenges didn't end that day. There were still bad days, still anger, still resistance. But something fundamental had shifted. The teacher stayed. He showed up every morning with the same calm strength, the same refusal to see his students as villains. Slowly, grades improved. Fights decreased. Students who had never spoken in class began to raise their hands. Not because they were afraid, but because they felt seen. The bullies learned a lesson none of them expected. Power doesn't come from breaking someone else. It comes from being brave enough to face your own pain. And the new teacher proved that real authority isn't loud, cruel, or controlling. It's quiet. It listens. It forgives. By the end of the year, that classroom was no longer known as the hardest in the school. It was known as the one where students changed, where anger turned into effort, where broken confidence was rebuilt. And it all started with one person who refused to be broken, who met cruelty with compassion, and showed that sometimes the strongest response to bullying is humanity itself.